want to welcome everybody to today's webinar. My name is Allison Daly, and I'm the head of marketing for Noted Source. Today, we are going to be discussing our newest research-based white paper release, Building and Capitalizing on Academic and Industry Relationships, Research on the Current State of Academic and Industry Partnerships. We'll talk a little bit later about what exactly we mean by an academic and industry partnership. But we want to give a shout out to our authors, Mary Beth Gasman, who is a Noted Source expert consultant. She's on our platform. Mary Beth is a Samuel DeWitt Proctor Endowed Chair in Education, a distinguished professor, and the Associate Dean for Research in the Graduate School of Education at Rutgers University. Our co-author is Rami Aboob, who will introduce himself later on, but he is the head of research at Noted Source. The primary concepts in our white paper, which we'll get into more detail later, are the concerns and challenges and advantages of academic industry collaborations, real-world examples of industry trailblazers and academic pioneers setting new benchmarks in collaborations, and actionable strategies and recommendations to strengthen and maximize the outcomes of AICs, which is a term that we're coining, academic and industry collaborations. So I'm going to pass it over to our distinguished guests to introduce themselves. Our first is Monique Idlett-Mosley.
I'm Monique Idlett. I am the co-founder and managing partner of Rain Ventures. We are a seed stage investment firm specializing in consumer tech and enterprise SaaS. And we're just so honored to be able to not just be on your board and, on your cap table, but also here today to have this conversation.
Amazing, Monique. And I will pass it off to Rami, who, as I mentioned earlier, also works for Noted Source and was a co-author of the paper.
Hi, everyone. I'm Rami Ayub. I'm the head of research and customer success here at Noted Source. And so in my role, I not only connect companies with academics who I believe can help streamline their corporate goals, I also manage the entirety of the collaboration itself. Now, prior to this role, as Ali mentioned, I had completed my PhD in medical biophysics at the University of Toronto, where the role there was slightly different in that I was characterizing the brain's response to different forms of cancer therapies that are given to children with brain tumors. But now in my role here as head of research, I have a deep understanding of the challenges that academic experts face in finding collaborations and making them successful.
Well, thank you so much, Monique and Rami. And I think we're in a unique position to talk about an industry and academic collaboration. Monique is she is all about industry, has been working in it for a long time. And Rami is all about academia and bridging that gap between academia and industry. So I'm really excited about our conversation today. I'm going to start with asking the first question, which is, why are academics uniquely the best people to partner with industry to achieve our corporate goals?
So that's a great question. From a practical sense, by virtue of academics working at universities and not at companies, they typically have less conflicts of interest than other types of external consultants. But now beyond the practicalities, these academics are folks who have spent decades studying a particular niche of research. And so they have a wealth of expertise that can help companies guide their strategy. Now, if we consider these longer term or larger scale partnerships, but where a company might be funding research at a university for an academic, this company now has access to cutting edge technology, as well as a team of graduate students and postdocs who will work under the academic to help streamline their R&D goals.
That's amazing. And Monique, as an investor in this business, an investor in lots of education and legal tech companies, why do you think that it is important to encourage academic and industry collaboration and expert collaborations?
Well, a couple of things. The first thing is that what we experience being partners with academia is lots of innovation. I think that when you are partnering with the academia side, there's less inside the box restriction. There is this idea of free thinking without any type of consequence. It's more about being able to really innovate, find new concepts, also being on the verge of innovation. So before it happens, it's usually happening on the campuses. You also have lots of untapped talent. And then, from a practical perspective and from a small business perspective, as a tech startup, it's also much cheaper. if you hire a corporate agency who's doing this or a full service agency, there's usually a retainer, there's usually expensive costs associated. Whereas if you partner on the academia side, it does have much less cost.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. And I think it's important to point out too, and one of the things, we discussed several things in our white paper, and we certainly hit those issues as well. But one of the things that we talk about in detail is the different types of academic collaborations that exist. So historically, when a business wanted to collaborate with academia, they would have to go to a university and build a partnership with that university, which, as you mentioned, Monique, if you have a smaller company or you need a short-term engagement or you just want to get some thought leadership on something and some new ideas in the door, you might not want to spend $25 million endowing a university research foundation. So Rami, I think I'll let you talk about it a little bit. And we do have to define this in our white paper because it is somewhat of a new relationship, which is the AIC. So Rami, why don't you let us know a little bit about what the AIC actually is and what it stands for?
Great. So I like to think of AICs, or academic industry collaborations, as an umbrella term that really cover a wide range of engagements that are possible between industry clients and academics. So you can imagine, on the smallest scale, a company might be looking to learn more about a particular topic. And so they would connect with an academic over the course of a 1 to 2 hour phone or Zoom call, where they're really just trying to get some strategic advice based on the wealth of expertise of the academic to help guide their strategy moving forward. Now, on the other extreme, you can imagine these larger scale partnerships where a company actually is funding research for the academic at the university. And so there, the engagements can be months or even years long at a time. And the goal there is really to develop a product or a new material that the company can then take and commercialize to their customers. Now, between these two extremes, there's, of course, a wide number of different types of engagements. And so just to name a few, there's, of course, instances where companies can connect with academics to develop surveys for their teams, develop curriculums for their teams, as well as lectures or master classes that they can then use. With all these different types of engagements, I do think they fall, again, under the umbrella of these academic industry collaborations.
Sure, rather than a traditional university partnership. And I will just point out that our platform, Noted Source, all of the academic experts on our platform are legally allowed to contract and consult with industry providers. They are approved to do that. It is in their contracts, so they're allowed to do that. And it can be difficult sometimes to identify academic experts that are able to work outside of the university in that way. But our network of experts has been curated specifically to provide you with those relationships. Along those lines, knowing that not everybody is allowed to contract out of their university, we do discuss in the paper and have done some research in the paper, which I think will be exciting for both industry members and academics to read, about the concerns that both parties have regarding these collaborations. So I just wanted to get your thoughts on the concerns that business leaders like you, Monique, may have when collaborating with academic experts. Some of the things that maybe prevented you before, or that you think about during those collaborations.
This is what I will say. What I love about what Noted Source is doing and why this white paper is so important is because Noted Source doesn't restrict the size of the company. And I think that's actually the really beautiful thing about the AIC, is that you can be a small early stage company and not have a large budget, but still get what you need from an appropriate match and researcher. Or you can be, as you see at Noted Source with some of your customers, you can be a very large Fortune 500 or larger company and still use Noted Source and get all the accuracy that you need per project or per strategy. And so for me, I think that when we talk about concerns, I think the biggest concern would be making sure you're partnering with the right researcher. But that's the same concern as if you're using an independent agency, making sure you have the right agency. And so I think that Noted Source does an amazing job at doing the right type of matches and partnerships for their customers.
Well, we can give that shout out to Rami, because he is the one.
Good job, Rami.
Good job, Rami. So Rami, you work so closely with our academics and our corporate partners. Why don't you let me know a little bit about what you think the concerns might be from an academic who's entering into this type of relationship, who may not have entered into this type of relationship before because they may not have had access to these jobs prior to joining a noted source.
For sure. I would say if we just think about the goals of academics, what they want to do is push out peer-reviewed articles to other academics in their field, as well as to the general audience who are interested in this field of research. Now, they typically want to do this in a very open source way. So they want to share the findings and the data with everyone so that they could potentially have other people kind of build upon their research for future endeavors. Now, this is in pretty stark contrast with companies who typically want to hold on to IP, as there's a lot of financial incentives to do so. And so I think the dichotomy between, academics who want to open source their work and companies who want to hold on to their IP is sometimes a point of contention and a concern for academics who haven't necessarily engaged with industries and industry clients in the past. I do think another concern might be that working with industry isn't necessarily seen as very favorable in some academic circles, as it isn't seen as pure research that's not associated with any sort of conflicts. And so I do think that this trend is changing over time as more academics are seeing the value of putting themselves out there and working with industries and actually leveraging their expertise in applied settings to change the world in a slightly different way than what they would have done in academia. And so, although that second point is still a point of concern, I do think that the tides are changing and more folks, especially, for example, the ones who are on our platform, are very open and amenable to working and applying their research with in corporations.
So one of the things that I think is important to point out at this juncture in the discussion is that this white paper was a result of Noted Source collaborating with its own academics. So we are a business. We went and drank our own Kool-Aid. We found an expert who was on the platform to to do this research for us. And it was a really interesting experience for me getting to work with them in that way. As saying, hey, listen, I am a person in business. I need this product. I need to build this piece of thought leadership. Can you take your collective knowledge and experience and help me do that? I think that a lot of the tools that I used inside of the platform, like the project management platform and the timeline and the payment structures, made it exponentially easier for me as a person that was as a startup, as Monique has mentioned many times, to hire an expert and then make all of that work seamlessly. But I would love to hear, Monique, you said that you do collaborate with lots of universities and have lots of projects going on. I would love to hear about some of the successful industry and academic collaborations that you've had.
Well, in particular, at Rain Ventures, we're generalists, right? And so even though we only invest in consumer tech and enterprise SaaS, so much of our thesis and our business model is around finding the exceptional founders. And so, for example, on our board, we have two academia. Two of them, they both are professors at Columbia, but then also one of them is also a professor at MIT, et cetera. And the things that we work on and how we collaborate with them is what is the future of technology, and trying to always make sure that we're staying ahead of what will be happening and disrupting in our industry, especially since we only specialize in investing in technology. For example, before AI became a really, general conversation, we were having that conversation 2 years before that with Cliff from Columbia. And we were partnered with experts. He was finding us experts and some of the things that we should be troubleshooting for, what would be issues in AI, and then possibly what also would be good in AI. And so having those type of collaborative efforts have meant a lot. We also have several portfolio companies that we've actually turned over to Noted Source, and I know that you all are working with a couple of them. We also have another company that we invested in where they did a white paper and they did partner with academia, and it was on the cash poor report, since they are the largest platform for neobanking for underfunded communities. And so these things have gone hand in hand. I think that one of the best examples is that when I was in the music industry, there wasn't technically an R&D department or division, and which allowed the tech perspective to kind of disrupt in a way that the industry was not prepared for. And so for me, having that information partnering with researchers, not for what's happening today, but what will be happening in the future, tomorrow, is what has always been important to Rain Ventures.
That's incredible. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to think about how the world has changed so much with the advent of technology and technology infrastructure to support businesses, where you're right. You know, a lot of the companies that we list out and that we benchmark as the most successful companies engaging in academic collaborations are, you know, the biggest companies in the world, right? They're Google, they're all of them. They're all of the big boys. Um,
And you know, Allison, I see the benefit. I think we don't talk about this benefit enough
mhm,
from the collaborative effort. I also see the benefit on the academia side, right?
yeah,
If they're partnering with large corporations or startup companies or growth stage companies, what they're also able to see is kind of what's happening on the corporate side as they're preparing their students for the next phase of their life, which is the work phase, and so in career. And so having it go from a reciprocity, they're both learning and they're both becoming aware. I think it does also enable the academia to actually teach in a way that also is in complementary to what corporations are looking for and the direction and the strategies that they're going forward with for their own business models.
that is an excellent point, Rami. And
Mhm.
Rami, do you want to expand on that a little bit? And I know that you have some personal experience with this because you came from academia and you joined a company. So maybe you could expand a little bit on the value that we're giving our academics by exposing them to industry and how industry operates fundamentally.
Yeah, I'll definitely echo some of Monique's points. I do think there's a lot of value for academics when they begin engaging with companies. I think from my perspective of having spent almost a decade in academia before making the jump to noted source, I was definitely in a space where my supervisors were ones who really kind of kept to themselves in academic circles, didn't really engage with industry much. And so for me as a graduate student looking to move forward at like moving into industry after I graduated, I didn't really have a lot of experience or any sort of like technical know-how of how to even like enter the workforce after I graduated. Um, and this is in like pretty stark contrast to some of the experts we work with now, where when they engage their students in the big R&D projects, those students can then say, we have actually worked with like one of the big Fortune 500 companies. We've done these exact things. We're comfortable with quick turnaround times. We're comfortable with pivots along the way of an R&D project. And we also are able to effectively communicate with industry clients in much more like lay terms than what is typically accepted in academia. So yeah, I do think there's a wealth of benefit that academics can achieve by working with companies. And that's all aside from the fact that they can also just make a lot more income as a result of these collaborations that can supplement their academic stipends.
You know, Rami, we've done a lot of industry and academic collaborations. I'd love to hear from you about one or two, without naming any specific names, but one or two of the collaborations that you've worked on at Noted Source that you think has been the most successful.
Yeah, so one that I think was quite successful that's maybe a little smaller in scale is one where we worked with a firm that was looking to learn more about the modern American family and how cultural forces are driving changes within the family dynamic in today's time. And this was quite an interesting request that I received, given that I realized pretty early on that it would require expertise from quite a number of different domains in like psychology and sociology to really get our client a really broad, holistic understanding of the question they're trying to address. And so rather than kind of trying to connect them with just one person that I thought kind of checked all the boxes, I connected them with three experts, again, from these subdomains in psychology and sociology. And the client was able to ask questions and lean on their expertise in order to have this much broader understanding of the evolving dynamics in the American family. And so I think the reason why this collaboration was so successful is that we were able to find them not one, but three experts that kind of hit slightly different parts of the question they're trying to address. And they were able to meaningfully take that information and drive home their strategy.
That's so awesome. And I think it's a really good segue. Um, a large part of our white paper addresses diversity in AICs. So, how important it is when industry and academics are collaborating with each other that you're working from a diverse pool of experts. And the paper also addresses that historically, as we've mentioned, academics that are collaborating with industry, that are tapped to collaborate with industry, are typically older white men at top tier universities. Now, there's any number of reasons that we could go into talking about that and why that might be. Regardless, it is the case. And what Noted Source is trying to do and has successfully done is open up the world of academic collaborations and access to industry to a broader, diverse background of academics, women, all different ethnicities, people from all different tiers of university. So, just because you're a tenured professor at, for example, Springfield College, doesn't mean that you don't have as good of a perspective to provide as the tenured professor that has been sitting at Yale or at Harvard for 25 years. So I don't have any statistics right now that is inside of our platform on how exactly diverse our expert network is, but what I can say is that we do a lot of work with L&D departments, and we do a lot of work with L&D and DI departments because we can give them access to a broader network of diverse experts. So Monique, I'd like you to talk a little bit, because I know RAIN has a similar value system. And I'd like you to talk a little bit about how important you think diversity is in, all aspects of business, most particularly when you're collaborating with academia and providing access to that.
Yeah, I think that inclusion and diversity is just a conversation across all verticals. I think we have, conversations. We recently saw affirmative action be taken down. There are long-term side effects of not having the most inclusive environment. And, for example, just think about Rain Ventures. When I stepped out of my music world to intentionally deal with this lack of diversity for investments and funding of all people, Eric and I wanted to kind of approach it we want to do venture the way it should have always been done, inclusively.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a ton of research on showing from a business perspective why inclusion actually is the highest ROI. And so when you look at the Rain Ventures portfolio, we have one of the most inclusive portfolios. And we were still able to focus on making sure that all underfunded founders were incorporated. So it's not a question of it's not out there. It's just how willing are people and intentionally be to make sure that they are having the most inclusive, exceptional environment. And oh, by the way, if you only care about the bottom line, it is the highest ROI. And I can proudly say that after being audited, Rain Ventures is actually performing in the top 1% of all of venture. And I do truly believe that outside of them just being exceptional founders, our intentionality behind inclusion, to me, really, really plays the part in that.
And what I think is Noted Source is doing in a really successful way is providing access for those in industry and in academia to get outside of their own networks and have those bigger conversations. And we're providing a marketplace platform for folks to do that with. And even if you don't decide to engage with us on our corporate partner side, or as an expert, at least you're there and you're in the space and you're hearing and you're a part of those conversations. So it really is close.
That's such a good statement, Allison, because I think that stays true to all people, right? Mm-hmm. Most people, when they're starting something or creating something, they go to their immediate network of thought leaders, thinkers, to kind of develop that. And, in order to make sure that you do have a diverse network, you do have to step outside of your comfort zone. And for many people, that's actually uncomfortable. But the reality is that if you do, that is where all the growth happens and the evolution of things happen. And so, embracing, whether it's from the AIC side and making sure that there is as many types of thought processes, gender, cultural differences, and like you said, levels of different academia experience. And from different levels of institution, I think that is actually the answer to all of the things that we need, which is inclusion.
Yeah, 100%. Rami, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I think that's spot on. And even just thinking about it from the academic perspective, a lot of the times the big schools obviously are really attractive for companies to want to work with. But if we think about like the expertise that some schools have and others don't, a lot of the smaller schools that maybe not as well known actually have the top experts in particular fields. And so I do think that if you really are niched into kind of like, I only want to engage with like the Harvards, Yales, Stanfords, and that's your cutoff, then you really are going to be missing out on a wealth of experience and expertise in these maybe potentially smaller schools, but ones that can definitely help streamline a lot of your goals in a way that might also be cost effective. Because again, because they're not associated with these bigger schools, they typically will not they will not expect as crazy of a compensation as some of those bigger schools. So yeah, I definitely agree with all the points both of you made, and yeah, I do think that diversity of expertise is something that we, at least in Notisource, really try to push for, and we're hoping that it kind of catches on with more and more successful collaborations.
I'm going to make a shameless plug for our next webinar that's coming out, which we have also hired a noted source expert for, and it is called Increasing Diversity and Equity Inclusion Through Academic Collaborations. That's going to be hosted with our dear friend and partner, Mia Tran, who is a professor at Springfield University. So look out for that coming up soon. Well, guys, yeah, it's so exciting. I'm super excited. Getting towards the end of the white paper, we've covered a lot of the points that's in it. The white paper outlines at the end some actionable steps that both businesses and academics can take to making sure that they make the most out of their collaborations. Because I do think that there is some requisite fear on both sides that we're going to spend all this money and we're going to do all this work, and then we're not going to get anything that we can use, or we're not going to get a product that I can manage up with, so to say. And so I think one of my favorites is embracing the spirit of true collaboration. And I'm just going to quickly read just a section out of the paper, and then we can talk about it. Collaboration is not one-sided game. It is an enormous industry view that a company hires the academic to develop a solution the same way it might hire a consultant. An erroneous academic view is to take the position and the money and run with it. True partnerships go beyond merely hiring an academic to produce a solution. It involves a shared perspective, a commitment to working together towards a common goal, and ample flexibility. So I'd like to talk a little bit with you, Monique, about encouraging the sharing of viewpoints and ideas and inviting disagreements and perspectives. And I have a feeling that you are never one to shy away from inviting disagreements or hearing different perspectives. So I'd like to talk to you a little bit about how you think that that's been beneficial to you in the development of your businesses and your collaborations.
You know, I have to say that I think so much of this stuff starts at home, right? And the ability to have a voice or an opinion, even in the structure of your family life. And then as you go into this world and you're on your career path, if there's not a safe space for you to have thought and difference of opinion, then what happens is that you truly don't have the ability for people to understand one another. And I think that we see this issue all over. And so for me personally, I'm very grateful that, yes, you're right. I have never shied away from how I feel about something or what my position is. I think that we have to be able to come to terms that we can agree to disagree, and that you have to leave space for difference of opinion. I feel like that's where solution is found, and that's where innovation is found. And when it comes to like the collaborative effort with academia and research and corporate, you know, the ability to have opinion is actually what makes our thought process so special and unique. And that is what makes each person individually unique, is that their ability to think for themselves and to share for themselves. And I think that having a voice is the reason I've been able to disrupt in industries. And I think that we have to continue to allow this. And I do think on the corporate side, especially when you're talking about long-term strategy, short-term strategy, and how they do partner with researchers, they have to be willing to allow a different perspective than what they've been sitting in comfort.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think that when I was at USA Today, we would joke, right, about the number one company, is that sometimes the number one company sits there in their number one status, and they forget that there's someone behind them in spots 2 and 3 who are coming for that particular concept. And if you don't allow thought, and if you don't allow conversations and differences. How do you grow? How do you grow your business model? How do you grow your future plans if you don't allow diverse thoughts, diverse perspectives? And most importantly, how do you take all that information and then come to a solution? Because I think that's where all the magic in the process of the journey happens. I encourage, and in fact, even as the investor, right, I'll say it from a perspective of Rain Ventures. There is not a time where we don't think the founding team's conversation is important. There is never a time that we think we know more than someone else. What we do like to do is think tank together. And through all of those different thoughts and processes is how we're able to come to a solution. And I think that as these corporations continue to use Noted Source, as you continue to partner with all of the academia, I think what you all are going to be able to showcase is how much it does grow the ROI when there are diverse thoughts and perspectives.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that is absolutely correct and so well put. One of the things that I think academics are best at is voicing their opinions because they have tenure and they have been trained to do that. And one of the things that I think is so special is that finally they're going to get to voice those opinions to people that are like you, that are disruptors and changers in industry, that are willing to hear that and take that and apply it to the world. I mean, when academics and industry meet, some of the greatest inventions known to mankind are created. So Rami, I'd like to talk to you a little bit now, just as we're wrapping up, about what embracing flexibility in the collaborative process means to you. There's a lot of project management that happens after the collaboration has decided to be undertaken. So some of the things like deadlines, the changing of deadlines, making sure that things get done, embracing flexibility. So like, how do you feel about that? And how do you think that academics can do a better job at doing those things?
So I definitely think that like embracing flexibility and being comfortable with adjustments to any sort of plan of action is very important for any sort of collaboration. But if we think about it from the perspective of, for example, like a large scale collaboration between an academic and an industry client, it is unlikely that the plan of action that you expect from the outset is what's going to happen at the end. In reality, there's going to be a lot of pivots along the way that you didn't necessarily expect, but ones that might be necessary to help you get to your final deliverable. And so I guess an example I can even give of that is I hosted an introductory call with one of our clients who are in the consumer product space with an academic that I thought would be a good match to help develop one of the products they want to commercialize. Now, within the first 10, 15 minutes of the call, the client was going over their plan of action for what they thought they wanted the academic to do to get to that final deliverable. But upon receiving that information, the academic actually just pitched an entirely new strategy to get to the same final deliverable that they believed would actually save them time and money to get to that final product. And so for the remainder of the 45-minute call, they actually spent the time just developing this new strategy in real time. And so if it wasn't for the client's ability to be okay with potentially pivoting or being okay with the flexibility of this new strategy that was presented to them, they would have likely went down the road of doing something that would have taken longer and cost them a lot more money in the long run. So I do think, so I'm a big proponent of this concept of embracing flexibility. And I do think that's something that experts at Noted Source are actually great at, in that because they're academics with a wealth of experience, they can oftentimes help provide strategies or insights to problems that the corporations may not have thought of on their own. So I do think that there's a lot of room for kind of pivots along the way once you kind of have a shared vision about a goal in mind. And yeah, I do think that the experts on our platform really help facilitate that.
That's awesome, Rami. I feel the same way. I can tell you that in the process of developing this research-based white paper with our expert, Mary Beth Gasman, and you, Rami, there's not one single part of it that I can say is better than the other. I am excited at Noted Source to hopefully make this research-based white paper an annual report that we put out on the state of industry and academic collaborations. how we can increase flexibility, how we can increase the number of diverse AIC collaborations that can happen, who's doing it well, what universities are supporting their professors to do this, what corporations are supporting this process also. So stay tuned for more. We welcome all of your feedback. And can't wait to share this incredible paper with everybody that wants to read it. So just one final question, and I think we've covered this a lot, but Monique, how do you think that Noted Source is actively trying to improve industry and academic collaborations?
Well, I mean, just the creation of the company itself, right? That actually was what Kofi wanted to do as the founder of this company. And then you think about even your own team, right? And how inclusive it is and how much of thought leadership you all have. And then you think about, what he's trying to even do for academia and give them opportunity to explore their ability to research and their thoughts and their expertise and take and match them, right, with the type of brands and partnerships that this is what these academia live for, right? Like to become an expert, to have a thought, to put a stamp on something. This is what they love doing. And so I think that everything that you all are doing at Noted Source is helping the AIC. And, even this white paper, and the future white papers that you all are discussing. I think that it's beautiful to be a part of this experience as an investor and a board member to really see the importance of this and how you all are disrupting this industry.
Oh, thank you so much. And we cannot thank you enough for taking your time and joining us today on this call. And so Rami, I will leave it up to you. How do you think that Noted Source is improving AICs?
So I will definitely echo a lot of Monique's points. I do think that, for example, the white papers are a great way to just showcase kind of our value proposition to both academics and to industry clients. But from a more practical sense, I do think that one of the things we do really well is we have a very rigorous vetting process of the academics before we ever kind of put them in contact with clients. Now, this vetting process also includes one-on-one calls with the experts to not only get a sense of their expertise, but also get a sense of whether or not they've worked with companies in the past, or whether they're comfortable with quick turnaround times or pivots along the way for any sort of project. And so when we do this, we really are much more confident when we do connect them with our industry clients, that these academics have the expertise and experience to collaborate in a meaningful way.
That
so,
is
yeah.
That's awesome. Well, Rami, thank you so much for your time too. And thank you so much for working with Mary Beth on this paper. Everybody, please subscribe to our Noted Source blog and email so you can get the latest updates directly into your inbox of all the content that we're releasing about academic and industry collaborations. Again, from the team at Noted Source and Rain Ventures, we thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
guys.